Hi there. Today I want to spend a little time with you discussing letters of recommendation and what role they play in the process and how students should think about them in terms of who they ask to write them on their behalf. So, in general, there are three categories of letters of recommendation that I talk to my students about. They are the counselor letter. So whoever is assigned to that student as their high school guidance counselor is the person responsible for writing that particular letter. It is not always required by every college that the student may apply to, but that is going to be the primary letter of recommendation when it is required. So there's sort of a hierarchy in this process, if you will, in terms of letters of recommendation. So the school counselor is typically the numero uno. And quite honestly, even if teacher letters are not required in the process, the counselor letter often is. Again, not always, because it all will depend on each individual college's sort of list of requirements when it comes to what makes a complete application. So the counselor letter done by the school counselor. This is why it is very important, whether you're in a gigantic school or a very small school, to try to connect with your counselor and make sure that they have some information about who you are. So if you are at a very large school and you don't have a really direct personal relationship with your school counselor, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. You're just going to have to provide some information, such as a resume outlining the activities that you've taken part in throughout high school, perhaps just some general background information about who you are as a student. Obviously, they will know your grades and things like that, but if you have certainly like a favorite subject or something like that that you've excelled in, you might want to point that out as they begin the process of writing your letter of recommendation. Or, quite frankly, you could just ask them, what kind of information do you need from me in order to write an effective letter that will cover all of the important details in this process? The second kind of letter is a teacher letter of recommendation. So this is very common. Again, not every college will ask for them. Not every college will require them. Some won't even accept them if you have them. But a teacher letter of recommendation it's what it sounds like. It's going to be written by somebody who has specifically taught you or your student in the classroom. Ideally, it needs to start. Here's how we start it. Not ideally. This is how it's going to start. You start by thinking about junior year teachers specifically. So thinking about those folks who taught you, if you're the student, or your child, if you're the parent, in the 11th grade. And thinking about who might have a story to tell that really highlights who you are as a student and what you do academically in the classroom. And what do I mean by that? So it's really easy to think that you need to focus on selecting a teacher in whose class it was easy. You made great grades. Really, it just was, you just kind of went through the motions, but you did well. Sometimes that isn't actually the most interesting letter that you might have in this process. It actually could be better to choose a teacher whose class in which maybe there was a really hard project or a paper that really challenged you when it was time to submit it, and you needed to work through that in a different way. But you came out on the other side and you were successful. So there's maybe more of an interesting story about your path and how you persevered in that particular case. I realize not everybody has that experience. For some students, it is just an easy process of being a student, doing their work, and that is what makes them successful. That's also okay. It's also not true that you have to pick a teacher that you think really, really likes you. I hear from students all the time, well, I can't ask my English teacher because she doesn't like me. First of all, yes, there can sometimes be personality differences, but teachers are trained to be able to professionally write these letters of recommendation, whether or not they truly bonded with you in the classroom. So try not to let that be a hindrance in who you select. What we do want to do is start with who are your core academic teachers in your junior year. So English, math, history, science, or world language. Start there. And then you've got to pick at least one of them from those 5 core areas. Ideally, you pick 2 of them from 5 of those 5 core areas. But if you really only can narrow it down to one really solid junior year teacher from the 5 core areas, then it's acceptable to select somebody who taught an elective. Or at that point, if you really feel like you have somebody who taught you in 10th grade, or parents, if you're helping your student figure this out, if 10th grade, there is a teacher from a core academic subject that really feels like could make the difference or could be the stronger letter writer out of additional 11th grade teachers, then it's okay to jump back to 10th grade and ask that teacher whether or not they'd be willing to do it. So counselor letters, then teacher letters. You're picking 2 teacher letters, even though not every school will require any at all. Some will only allow you to submit 1. You want to have 2 ready and available because that is oftentimes the magic number. So it's better to have them ready on the front end than try to scramble down the road and ask for an additional one when the time comes. Then the third type of letter of recommendation is less common, but I do get asked this question quite often. Can I have somebody outside of school write me a letter of recommendation? Can that be somebody who coached me? And that's actually kind of inside of school, but it's not a true teacher recommendation. Can it be a coach? Can it be somebody who supervised me in a volunteer role or in a job that I've had? Can it be somebody from church who I've done work with who knows me really well? The answer to that is yes, it's perfectly fine to ask somebody to do that for you. However, again, not every college is going to allow you to submit it. So if you've got somebody that really you feel that connection with, you do feel like they know who you are as a person, can maybe shed some light on your non-academic side of life, then it's perfectly fine to ask them. You just need to be prepared that there will be some schools that won't let you submit it. So keeping that in mind, only ask one outside person. We certainly don't want a lot of extra work going into something that might not even be able to be used in this process. So be mindful of that in terms of people's time and everything. Other important things to note is that now, if you're hearing this now and it is springtime of junior year, now is the time to ask teachers to do this. Absolutely, they should be asked before summer break begins, because some of them will want that advanced time to actually work on the letters over the summer when they're less busy teaching classes full time. So ask them now. Ideally, you ask them in person and ask whether or not they'd be willing to write a letter of recommendation for you. And when they ultimately say yes, which most of the time they will, when they say yes, my advice then is to go home, send them an email and say, thank you so much for agreeing to write my letter of recommendation. Do you need any additional information from me? Obviously, then you are starting a sort of electronic trail that indicates that you all did in fact have that conversation. Then they agreed to write the letter for you, and you're opening the door for whether or not they need to have more details from you about either what you've done in that classroom, or if it's an outside person, sort of what you want them, I should say, to focus on in that outside letter. Bear in mind, teachers will often ask you for a copy of your resume. Ideally, teachers are not talking about what you do in your extracurricular life. It is really focused on academics. So to the extent that you can steer them towards that and talk about something that you really enjoyed learning in their class, or a particular project that you really enjoyed working on, for example, that's a better use of a teacher letter of recommendation as opposed to them really recapping what you do outside of the classroom. So lots of ways to get accolades and support added to your overall application through these various types of recommendation letters. Certainly, if you have any questions about it, we are here to help and can help you sort through who the right people are in your corner to advocate for you in this process.